I've received countless messages from people telling me that they want to get into tabletop games, but they just don't know where to start or how to do it. And, mean as it can sound, the only advice I can give them is to get off their butts. Use a search engine, find a local game store, and go there. Plenty of sanctioned games, local groups, and such will have postings on a board or a calendar somewhere. Wanting it isn't enough. You have to go and do it. It might seem intimidating to get into a hobby like this, but it's the best and only advice that I can give. That way you'll have your own D&D stories. Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I am your host, TheWriter. This is the show where I sit here and regale you with all the tabletop gaming stories and remember when something cool happened playing tabletop games. Now, we come back now to start a new campaign, the Sunless Citadel. And those of you that have been playing D&D long enough remember the Sunless Citadel. It was a published module during the days of D&D 3.5. Now, I had come home from college, having closed out the Goddess Wheel super campaign that was 25 some odd episodes long, but had left all my college buddies behind and was bringing my D&D and Pathfinder knowledge home for the summer, I suppose. And I, of course, had a big group of high school buddies, all of which were into the same nerdy stuff I was, so I said, hey, guys, let's get together and play D&D over the summer. And they said, yeah, sure, of course. And I wanted to introduce them to Pathfinder, because Pathfinder is better than 3.5 in almost every way. And so I pulled out the Sunless Citadel module and had them make characters based on Pathfinder. And the only adjustment you really need to make between the two is that if you're using monsters from 3.5, you just subtract 1 from their challenge rating. So, not a lot of adjustments. It's just Pathfinder is a better, somewhat crunchy numbers, but better system than 3.5. So, they rolled up the following. And I've got my notes here, so pardon me if I have to pause during the story, because this was a very long time ago, and some of the details may have escaped me. So, I've got my notes here. We got a halfling cleric named Tail, who was talented in the healing arts. He took the divine healing archetype, so where he gave up a bunch of other stuff to basically buff up all of his healing spells. He wanted to be like a devoted, like, cleric of the light, if you will. We got David, who was an armor master, archetype of the fighter. He was human, wanted to be a hero, not a lot of craziness going on in his backstory. Just wanted to be recognized as a great hero and rise to fame and fortune through that. So, being an armor master, he got, bonuses to his armor, to armor smithing, and of course he picked up a big longsword and devoted all of his fighter feats to hitting harder with the sword, so a standard fighter, basically. We got the paladin Harmony, who was also human, very like daddy's girl, came from a rich family and was recently cut off because she shows a lack of discipline, and she's kind of on probation as a paladin. Anyways, she just barely made the cut, so she needs to get out into the world, do some good, repay her debts to her god for giving her magic powers, make the world a better place, and quit being such a selfish brat, basically. So, she's gone through all of her training, but she's still looking out for number 1, so she needs to experience the world. Then we have Lad, the human rogue, who is basically a private investigator. He put all of his points down into gather information, into perception, into spot and search and all that kind of stuff. Anytime he entered a room, he would just throw the D20 and say, what do I see? And he had, like, outrageous bonuses to it. He kind of made him into a one-trick pony, but he had an office in Absalom, which is a Pathfinder city, and he was there doing the PI thing. So he was a rogue in class, but a private investigator in character. So that's what we ended up with. Cleric, fighter, paladin, rogue. So a lot of thick armor walking around, a lot of powerful healing magic, and I guess Lad was going to be their face. He didn't even carry like a really strong weapon. He had like a sap, and it's like his powers were just all in his eyes. So they are on the Gray Road to a town called Oakhurst, a very small, like population 400 something logging town in the middle of nowhere, far out from anything. And the town is, of course, resting up against a forest, and beyond that is a canyon where nobody goes, but we'll get to that. And I figured, what's a good way to start a campaign? And these guys were just then learning Pathfinder, and the only reason that they could jump onto Pathfinder is because they already knew 3.5. And I'll go ahead and tell you that this group was kind of like my clown shoes group. Like, my college buddies were all very, like, serious face, epic, high-end fantasy D&D players. And when I came home to, like, my high school buddies, they were the clown shoes, give the king a wedgie, you know, sleep with all the women, you know, a less serious group. But I thought, rather foolishly, I thought that I could groom them into something a little better if they took on Pathfinder, and me being the experienced DM could guide them along the way. Because there's different levels of seriousness. There's like, you know, do you want to play, you know, Bastion of Broken Souls and take on the underworld or the Underdark and all this, or do you want to just like go from A to B and laugh and throw the D20 and like I said, give the king a wedgie? Is like there's a big spectrum as far as how players act, and these guys were kind of at the other end of the spectrum, but it went okay. Starting them out in this, because the Sunless Citadel is a level 1 to level 3 adventure. So you can start it with brand new characters, and by the end of it, you're supposed to be level 3. So it's a good taste of the system to come if you start out fresh. So how do we start a game like this? And they go, do we start in a tavern? And I say, no, you start in a carriage. It's the four of you and a pair of honeymooners and one other traveler. So it's kind of like a wide like taxi carriage. There's like 8 or 10 people. And it's pulled by 4 horses, or 4 or 6 horses. It's got everybody's stuff strapped to the roof. And you have time to introduce one another, and they're not quite like a group yet. Like, none of them know why anybody else is there. But Oakhurst is a nice, quiet place. I said, oh, by the way, everyone, I forgot to give you your mail as we were leaving Absalom. And the driver kind of leans around and puts this fat stack of mail into Tail, the cleric's lap. And in real life, I lean over into my backpack and I'm like, okay, here's your mail. And it's this fat stack of letters, and they were just shocked straight away that I had sat down and handwritten some of these and printed some of the other ones, so they were all different handwriting. And I gave everybody 2 or 3 pieces of mail to start the campaign. They were like, wow, that's really cool. So they're like, I had envelopes and I wrote, you know, fake addresses and drew stamps on them and all this kind of stuff. So I made like a stack of fake mail to give them to start this campaign from characters from their own backgrounds. So let me see. Our fighter, David, got one from his master. You know, if you want to be a great hero, David, you must at first acquire a named weapon. And David goes, a named weapon? He goes, yes, in the letter. He goes, yes. Every great hero or historical figure always has a named weapon. And if you want to make a big name for yourself, that's one of the first things you can do. So remember, Excalibur, Needle, Sting, the Keyblade, you know, all these other great heroes had named weapons. You need one too. And David's like, yeah, if I want to be a great hero, I should have a named weapon. And he goes, within the Sunless Citadel in the canyon to the north of Oakhurst is a legendary longsword called Shatterspike. Go to the Sunless Citadel and recover it, and you will be well on your way to being a great hero. And David's like, wow, that was really cool, great. And then for Tail from the our healing cleric, Tail gets a letter from the church to visit the Sunless Citadel to recover holy artifacts, because the Citadel once stood at the top of a great hill before a great calamity split the earth open into this canyon, and the Citadel sank down to the very bottom, beyond the reach of the sun. And it could be filled with holy artifacts and tomes and books and, you know, scripture that hasn't seen the light of day in hundreds of years. And so, you know, Tails got his own mission. You know, to Harmony from the church was kind of like terse. It says, you know, cut your teeth, don't get into trouble. Look after Tail. I think they were both from the same church. Look after Tail while he's searching for artifacts. Don't fuck it up, you brat, basically. So she was rather badly treated because she was rather badly behaved. So, and Harmony was probably the best player out of the bunch, because she had a storyline set up for herself where she started out as like daddy's little girl, cut off from her money and everything, to kind of learn to be responsible, to get up in the morning when she's supposed to, and to be a better person. So she had this planned out, and it actually worked pretty well, but we'll get to that. But the letter from the church was not a nice one. Cut your teeth, look after Tail, don't be a bitch. You know, you're on probation from Paylor as it is. You just barely made the cut. You need to get out there and do some good. Look after your fellow Paylor follower, and don't get into too much trouble. You know, try not to die. And then Lad, who was kind of the star, I guess, of this mission, because he got a letter from a lady from the House Huckrelay, who was, you know, this lady, Madame Huckrelay. She sent him out to Oakhurst to look for her niece and nephew, who I don't remember their names, so we'll just call them niece and nephew, because those darn kids went out deciding they wanted to be adventurers, to slay monsters and gather treasure, when they already come from a great noble house that is, you know, well off monetary wise. They should be, you know, running the fish market and opening shops, giving people jobs, and they ran off to have adventure. How dare they? But they've been missing for like 6 weeks, so I'm afraid they might be dead, lad. So I want you to go out, find out what happened to them. If they're dead, you know, both of them have signet rings. You can bring those back as proof. And if they're alive, bring them back alive. That'd be great too. So Lad is on a mission from a noble family to look for these missing people. So at the end of the day, we are looking for a sword, looking for holy artifacts, watching over our fellow churchgoer, and looking for missing persons. So quite an array of things to go on. And, you know, again, they love this mail. Try it sometime. If you're DMing a game, write a bunch of mail and pass it out to your players. Write junk mail. Say, you know, the such and such guild is coming to your city, or, you know, give them like a bill for 7 gold pieces, you know, for trash pickup for the month of blah blah. It's 3 gold pieces, and, you know, that's nothing, but it's still mail. It'd be something interesting to start a campaign by. If they've got a mailbox or a guild hall or something like that, write out a bunch of stuff, or ask your friends to write like quick notes from like a wife, a lover, a teacher, a master, a friend, a family member, and just like trickle them into your campaign so that it kind of fills in their lives around them, and they'll love every second of it. So DM advice of the day, mail. But they arrive at Oakhurst, and one of the other things that Lad was asked to investigate, or no, not Lad, Tail, while he was looking for holy artifacts, there was also the rumor mill said that goblins were coming out of the forest selling magic apples to Oakhurst. And they go, really, magic apples? And Tail goes, yes. Apparently, every season, so 4 times a year, every season, goblins come out of the forest to the north of Oakhurst, and they offer up a magic, like, apple of the gods, basically. Whenever you take a bite out of it, it's as though you've been hit with a healing spell. And they go, really? There's like, 15, 20 bites in an apple. Well, how much are they selling it for? And he said 50 gold pieces. And, 50 gold to a bunch of farmers and loggers is like 2 months' wages. So, or in this economy at least. And so, and of course they buy it because, wouldn't you? It's a magic healing apple. If somebody pitches out a window or something, they can take a bite and be just fine. So that's poisoning, broken bones, bleeding, bruising, other injury. You've got this magic apple, and it never goes bad. You could take one bite and then not take another bite for a month and it would still be fine. They don't rot. They're magic. And they kind of group together because they've realized they're all going to the same place, this Sunless Citadel, if you will. And they go to the local item shop, I guess. It's a small village with less than 50 buildings, so there's like a general store. And they go to the general store, and of course they've got the apple there. I guess it's summer then. It's like the summer apple from the goblins, and it's got a price tag on it, 75 gold pieces, because he paid 50 gold for it, so he's selling it for 75 to make a profit. And it's under glass, it's labeled, it's got all the stuff, this comes from the goblins to the north, it will heal all wounds, blah, blah, blah. You can ask so-and-so who took a bite and his broken arm was healed instantly. This is the same breed of apple. And, they go, well, why didn't they just, take that apple and, bury it and grow their own apple tree? And I could say, well, the shopkeeper tells you that they tried that several times. But anytime they bury the apple and it grows up into, a couple of shoots of wood or weeds or whatever, the goblins always come in the dead of night and chop it down and dig it up, and they take it away from them. So they can't grow their own magic apple tree. They've tried. And they go, oh, well, the goblins kind of got them in a pinch, though, don't they? So how are the goblins... Do they have a magic apple tree somewhere? Have they not searched the forest? And they say, yeah, they've searched the forest, but there's monsters in there. And they go, monsters, really? They haven't run into anything, so why should they believe anything about monsters? And they go, what? More goblins, hobgoblins, orcs? And they go, no. There are trees in that forest that walk about and bite people. They have jaws made of splinters and claws made of sticks, and they can tear a man to pieces. We call them twig blights. Twig blights, yes. They bleed, poisonous tree sap when you cut them up, so you have to be careful, and they drool this nasty stuff out so you can get poisoned, or when they claw you, it's really bad. They go, twig blights, huh? And say, yes, but they don't come into Oakhurst, so we don't go into the forest. So we wait for the goblins to come and deliver this apple once every 3 months. And they go, oh, okay, so it's self-assured insurance. So if the goblins control the twig blights and the twig blights are producing these apples, there's a chain of command here, or at least like a symbiotic relationship. So nobody from Oakhurst goes out into the forest for fear of both the goblins and the twig blights. So the source of these magic apples is unknown. And it's up to Tail, who was sent by a master cleric, to find out more about these magic apples while he's looking for holy artifacts. And because the Sunless Citadel is, the local destroyed ruin of magic stuff that used to be a holy site, that's probably a good place to start looking. So they kind of fan out into the town for a while. And again, it's a town of less than 500 people, less than 50 buildings. It's surrounded by forest and farmland, and it's off this unpaved, again, it was called the Gray Road. It's surrounded by mist, and the buildings kind of slump, and it's not a bad place. It's just kind of like a tired old town. There's not a lot of kids. There's not a lot of crazy. There's no festivals that stop here every year. The gypsy caravans sometimes just steer around them because they're so far out of the way. Oakhurst isn't especially fascinating. But before they go, they decide, they ask around and say, you know, how far is the canyon? How far to the Sunless Citadel? And of course they buy a map for cheap, and they go, well, according to this, it's like an 8-hour trek to the Sunless Citadel. Why don't we just stay the night in Oakhurst, and then we can walk there and go from there. Like, no horse wants to go into that forest. They can smell the twig blights, so we'll have to hoof it. And they go, okay, well, Tail steps forward, our cleric. Tail goes, well, I've got a contact here in Oakhurst. You know, that my master cleric sent me here with the intention of looking into the Sunless Citadel, but there's also a cleric here, a cleric of Paylor. There's no church, but it's like a healer's hut, if you will, that we can maybe get some free beds or some free food or something. And her name is Nadel. And Nadel is also a halfling cleric. And so there's, you know, X number of humans, there's like 3 halflings and 4 dwarves, and you know, it's not especially racially diverse out here, but it's a quiet place. So Nadel can do her meditations and her Paylorian Bible studies out here, and once she's investigated enough about these magic apples and stuff, she sends word to the High Cleric, who in turn sent Tail. So it goes full circle. And Nadel is a unique case because they wander up to like the healer's hut with the hospital symbol on it, and that's basically all it is. It's a small house where she mends broken bones and sets jarred shoulders and tends to the sick when you know, one person gets sick, the whole village gets sick. It's like an island there when fall comes or whatever. But the only thing about Nadel was that if you startled her, her personality would flip. And they go and they bang on her door, and it startles her while she's sitting there reading or whatever. So this halfling woman runs up to the door and throws it open and goes, "Who dare disturbs Uva Braupain?" And they go, "Uva Braupain? We're looking for Nadel." And Tail looks over and goes, "I think that's her. It matches the description. You know, she's a halfling woman with healing arts and a cleric, and there's nobody else around here." He's like, "Hello, handsome." And she grabs Tail by like the front of his collar and yanks him inside the door frame and goes, "You will be my dirty little altar boy." And slams the door on the rest of the party. And we hear Tail go, "Ah!" And he gets pulled in. Nadel she had mental instability on her character sheet, to where if she got startled or scared or like you give her a heart attack through fear, she would revert to like this Russian dominatrix woman who would like nothing else than to strap you to a table and whip you or whatever it happened to be. So that's why she's out in the middle of nowhere where nothing exciting happens, because she's freaking dangerous. She still has all of her healing powers, but her mind is split into halves. And Uva Braupain has no problem, you know, stripping Tail all the way down and like putting him up in chains and like beating him with a cat of 9 tails. So of course the party like beats the door in straight away. And it's like, you know, "Nadel, what are you doing?" And they like shake her by the shoulders, and there's enough like bits of snow globe snow in her head that she realigns back to the way she's supposed to be, and then she's very calm and demure and helpful to them once again. So we have Nadel on one side and Uva Braupain on the other side. It's like, okay, don't stomp, don't drop anything, don't make any loud noises, because Uva Braupain will probably beat you up and get off while she's doing it. So they talk to Nadel for a while, who tells them more about the goblins coming in with the 50 gold piece magic apples, and they can't grow their own, etc., etc. Basically everything that the shopkeeper told them. She offers them a couple of potions, free beds, etc., etc., which they don't take because, you know, if she goes to sleep and then Uva Braupain wakes up, they don't want to wake up on the rack somewhere while she struts around in tiny halfling dominatrix armor and whips them until she gets off. But they thank her for the potions and the free stuff and like the rations, and she gives Tail like an extra holy symbol to wield his powers with and things like that. And they leave her in peace. It's like, okay, we've got to like approach her a bit more carefully from now on. And they do notice that there's a double wide bed in Nadel's bedroom, because you usually live at your place of business anyway. And they go, Nadel, where's your husband? Maybe he can tell us a few more things. And she goes, oh, well, my husband's missing. He went to the Sunless Citadel not long ago to look for holy artifacts, and he hasn't returned. And Tail goes, oh, well, our list of missing people grows ever longer, doesn't it, lad? And Lad kind of nods, and he goes, yes. We're going to the Sunless Citadel ourselves, and we will look for him while we're there. Obviously no guarantees. How long's he been gone? About a week? Well, if we find him, we'll try to bring him back, or at least give you the news of what became of him. And she goes, thank you very much. She's very shy, very soft-spoken. Maybe she's gone mad because her husband is gone and she's sexually frustrated. I don't know what the logic there was, but Nadel was quite potent as a character. So they had to be very careful about like loud noises or anything around her, because overbrow pain was more than enough to overtake them. And they stay the night at the inn. All the regular stuff, dinner and dancing before the big adventure the night before. A few drinks, eyeing up the cleavage of the barmaids, all the usual stuff you might expect from level 1 adventurers about to go cut their teeth on the local dungeon. And they stay the night. And they head out at the crack of dawn the next morning. And they go off out into the wood north of Oakhurst. And they go, well, according to our map, it's an 8-hour walk or whatever from Oakhurst to like the edge of the wood where the canyon starts. Why don't we go all the way to the edge of the wood and then stay the night there, and then we can move on into the canyon. The sun doesn't shine there anyway, but surely like at noon the beam of light would be more advantageous going down into the earth. And they go, okay. So I was like, okay, roll your travel checks, and they roll it. And of course they run into twig blights, which are these little like stump monsters, which, just like the villager said, had green tree sap dripping from their jagged splintery mouths, and they had wide sticks for clawed hands, and their roots like shuffled them around a lot faster than they probably ought to have. But they're a level 1 party. They got to cut their teeth on something, so they run up and they do battle with these things and take them out. And of course they can't set them on fire because they're in the middle of a forest, but they cut these wooden monsters up until they stop trying to attack them. And they kind of get a taste of how strong the twig blights are, because they can slash or spit or bite or like run over you if you're Tail and you're only a halfling. He got run over like 3 times. It was hilarious. But with our devoted tank and our devoted healer, the holy trinity of classes, they did pretty well. Except for Lad, who did not have an edged weapon. He just kind of had to stand back. So They move on through the forest, and they see a goblin like run by at one point, and they encounter a few more twig blights, but they only seem to come in like 1s and 2s. There's never a big group of them anywhere. So versus 4 adventurers, well 3 because you can't count Lad, but versus 3 adventurers, it's a fairly challenging but even fight. So they take a little bit of damage, but they get past these stump monsters. And being that Harmony is immune to disease and poison, being a paladin, they've got no problems as far as the tree sap goes, because David's wearing thick armor and Harmony has such a high save she can't be poisoned anyway, so they don't have to worry about it too much. And they get to the edge of the wood, and they've come to the start of the canyon, and they go, okay, we're going to stay here for the night. I know it's like 3 in the afternoon, but I'd rather go down there fresh, says Lad. And everybody agrees with him. Lad's kind of the leader. He's the face. He's the one that does the least fighting, so the leadership role kind of fell on him. He was by far the smartest, too. But they've been through a couple of battles. They need to recover their HP and their spells and all that fun stuff anyway before they go into the canyon proper. So they stop maybe 100 feet inside the tree line, and they go, okay, we're going to make camp here. You know, Harmony, why don't you stay up first, because we're not going to be able to rouse you out of bed, you lazy thing. And they, again, poke fun at her because she's the lazy daddy's girl greenhorn, and she basically encouraged this IRL. It's like, she's going to start out as a brat, so you may as well treat her like one. So Harmony has first shift, and I go, okay, Harmony, your friends are all asleep. You're keeping watch around the campfire and stuff. You can, like, you know, shine your sword or whatever, clean it off the tree sap. Roll me a fate check to see if you guys are attacked in the dead of night or if anything happens. And Harmony rolls the 2d10 or whatever. And you were attacked by twig blights. Oh no! 2 of them boil in out of the foliage. And Harmony's like, I charge right into their faces. Everybody get up! More twig blights! Ah! And by the time her party had like gotten up and grabbed their weapons and run over, Harmony had killed both of them. So they're like, oh, well, that wasn't too bad. Like, they'd learned enough about how twig blights fought that Harmony had, like, adapted to their fighting style or something like that. She rolled exceptionally well and cut them both down before her party had the chance to help. So I was like, okay, false alarm, everybody, go back to sleep. And I was like, okay, Harmony, roll it again. And she rolls it again. No twig blights this time. So then she trades out with Lad, and Lad trades out with Tail. So David could sleep through the night because he had the most hit points to recover. And, you know, come the new dawn, our adventurers, you know, packed up all their stuff and stamped out their campfire. And they start into the canyon. And the canyon is sheer. Like, something weird happened here. This was not carved by water. This was like an earthquake or an explosion or something tore the earth open, and it just happened to make a canyon like crack shape for the Sunless Citadel, where it was like perched on the top of a hill, to sink into. And how the building didn't like shake apart on the way down, I don't know. It's magic, but that's how you explain everything. And they start journeying down into this canyon, and there's like stairs and then a platform and stairs and then a platform. It's like as like the packing donkey would go, you know. It's narrow, but it's not impassable. Now, they start noticing right away that this place is just a little bit fortified, because on the first platform there's a rubble trap, which is basically if you trip it, it causes a small avalanche. And Lad notices this right away because he has high perception and high passive perception, so he can notice things even without rolling for it. So it's a big empty platform, but he notices that, you know, under this thin layer of dirt is a pressure plate, and it's wired up the side of the wall, and oh, there's a lot of loose rocks up there. It's an avalanche rubble trap. So they go around it, and they go further down, and then there's dire rats. Oh no! And I was like, I'm just reading out of the module, guys. It says there's rats. So they've been fighting stump monsters and rats, and they go, you know, these aren't very exotic monsters. I was like, you're level 1. If I use an exotic monster, it'll just kill you. So, you know, eat your vegetables, and then you can have something better. Which is actually why I don't like starting campaigns at level 1 anymore, is because there's very few monsters in like the level 1, level 2 range, other than like goblins and kobolds and rats and bugs, and everybody hates those because they're cliche stereotypes. But the Sunless Citadel hosted like rats or dire rats for them to fight, and then they reached the canyon floor. And I go, before you, peeking in out of the darkness, because they light a big bullseye lantern and kind of shine it around, is a big superstructure, and it looks as though it was a cathedral, a grand church, or a citadel, hosting grand, golden-topped domes with spires leaning in odd directions, and there's slitted windows, some of which have lights in them, some of which do not. There's broken down walls, and the doors are missing from their hinges. You could just walk in. Excuse me, and it just sprawls in all directions. It's a very oddly shaped building for a church. Excuse me, for a church or a citadel. And they go, huh. So the whole thing, just like the earth broke open and the whole damn castle or citadel fell all the way down here and didn't shake apart. So it must be like a magic building or something like that. It was built to last, or built by dwarves, or built all into one piece so it wouldn't come apart, because apparently sinking into a canyon didn't damage the building a whole lot. It's been sitting here for 300 years, and it has apparently changed hands a few times if there are goblins running around. And they go, okay. And Lad kind of steps forward and goes, well, if I were a brand new adventurer out to make a name for myself, I suppose this would be one of the first places I visited. And if the niece and nephew of Madame Huckrelay wandered in here, surely they would have left a trail. So he starts rolling his perception, and he actually had a magnifying glass and wandered around looking for footprints and different things like that. Camp leavings, ration wrappers, anything that they could have left behind. And I go, you don't really find anything that would say that people have been here very recently, Lad, but you do find a lot of goblin tracks, and you do find a lot of three-toed, like, reptilian tracks. And he looks over at his party and he goes, kobold. There are kobold here. And kobolds and goblins hate each other, even if it's just like a racial thing. And so there are factions. There are multiple factions in this citadel. And Lad kind of looks around for a while, and there's like a rope trap that's waiting in front of one of the doors. There's some rough terrain because of all the rubble that's fallen around this place, but they navigate their way across it as slowly as they can to kind of like get into like the dungeon proper, if you will. The citadel itself was a dungeon crawl. And as far as like starting out new D&D players, a dungeon crawl is probably like the healthiest thing you can do. And as far as like telling the story of what happened, it's a dungeon crawl. It's them playing the game. It's looking for traps, fighting goblins when they come boiling around the corner. I can kind of just give you the highlights, because the Sunless Citadel hosts like 60 rooms. And if I stopped to describe every single one, I'd be sitting here for hours, and I would probably need the module sitting in front of me. But so I'll kind of give you the cliff notes of what happens, and so it's like the highlights for you. And I've got my notes here. So right away, they do notice that the goblins and the kobolds are kind of having a turf war over the Sunless Citadel itself. And there's a lot more goblins than there are kobolds, but the kobolds are clever, and they're fighting back and forth over the structure itself. Like, this is basically a castle to them. So the goblins are dug in and are many, and are, better equipped to hold a siege, if you will. But the kobolds are faster and probably function better in groups than the goblins do. So they're a little more militant, a little, I guess, smarter. It's hard to tell who would win between goblins and kobolds, because it almost comes down to what the terrain is. Because stat-wise, they're basically interchangeable. 1d4, 1d6 of health. A dagger, 1d4 minus 1. There's no way they're going to crit you. There's no way they're going to get through David's armor at all. But they are two separate factions. And, there's 6 goblins here. There's 3 kobold there. There's political tension between them, because King Gobgob has been trying to exchange for prisoners lately, so there are prisoners of war on both sides. This is a small-scale war that is happening here. So while they're going through all these traps, finding like little statuettes, holy artifacts, looking for the niece and nephew and the missing and Nadal's missing husband, you know, they've basically wandered onto the front lines of a small war. And while they're doing this, they run across the remains of a third faction that was there a long time ago. They were dragon cultists. And they go, dragon cultists? And I say, yes. You know, when they're in this certain room, you see that there's graffiti on the wall that says Ashardalan. And anybody who calls themselves adventurers knows who Ashardalan is. He is a colossal red dragon, thousands of years old, very powerful, and has many, many dark followers. And they go, Ashardalan. And I go, yeah. So his name is written in graffiti on the walls. You can see coffins that have dragon designs on them where they buried their culty priests. You know, after this place sank into the canyon, they probably came and inhabited it straight away, and then the goblins overtake them, and then the kobolds overtake them, and, you know, this place has changed hands multiple times, but it seems that the cultists are gone. And of course, it is David's prerogative to use his sword to pry open the coffins and look for Shatterspike, only to be assaulted by the undead that lie within, because of course, whenever you open the coffins, the body springs out and attacks you. So they fight a few undead before David realizes that they're not really buried with anything. They're just like shambling skeletons, shambling low-level zombies. You know, it's your greed is making it harder on your party. So he eventually stopped. And in one of the great rooms, where it looks like it used to be a feasting hall or something, they actually came across a baby white dragon that the goblins were trying to train. It had like an iron collar and a chain. It had gotten away. And the goblins were trying to train it to fight against the kobolds, but white dragons are sentient creatures. So this one hadn't learned how to talk yet, but it had gotten strong enough to outstrip its goblin masters. So they fought and killed that as well. And it's like, hey, your first dragon kill, good job. You know, had that been a Ashardalan, you'd be, you know, pizza paste by now. But you got the little one, good job. And that was actually quite a challenge for them, because baby white dragons, you know, that's ice breath. And they don't have protection from ice damage at this point. So they start trying to, like, push their way further in, because clearly all of these rooms are either claimed by the goblins or claimed by the kobolds. And it's hard to, like, draw the lines on this turf war. It's just like this chunk of the Sunless Citadel belongs to the kobold, and this bigger chunk belongs to the goblins. And like I said, the goblins are more numerous, but the kobold are smarter, so it's a weird way to, like, draw the battle lines as they were trying to get through. And at one point, they came across a room that was filled to the brim with caltrops, which are the spiky things that you throw them down, somebody steps on them, ah, my feet, and they fall over. Or if you're trying to get away, it's a good thing to throw behind you. And we came into, like, a vicious argument in this room, like player versus DM, because at the far end of this hallway, covered with caltrops, was a few kobolds who had, like, a crate full of throwing spears. So while they were trying to come down the hallway, the kobold could just stand there and throw spears at them while they were taking damage from the caltrops. And finally David's like, I use my tower shield and like scrape the caltrops aside. And this is, you know, a bad admonition for myself as a DM, but I wouldn't let him do it. And I go, well, and again, this was a long time ago. I should have known better. You know, this was a learning experience, if you will. And I go, well, you don't know if the floor is a flat space, if the bottom of your shield is a flat design. You know, you're going to be changing the makeup of the terrain from, like, rough to normal. You know, I don't really have rules for that. I had like 8 things. I should have just said yes. Yes, fine. You move at 1/4 speed, but your you're pushing caltrops out of the way with the bottom of your shield while the kobold throws spears at you. And because a tower shield provides cover, it's basically a door that's on your arm. But for some reason, I didn't let him do it. I just was an idiot back then. I don't have any excuse. It was a bad call. I told him no, and David was not happy with this, of course. He was like, I should be able to do that. Just make a call or something. It was like, and this was during my like rules lawyer phase. And I was like, I don't have numbers and I don't have a rule for this, so you can't do it, which is not a reason. It's not. If you don't have a rule for something, you got to just make a call and, you know, roll with the punches. That's what makes a good DM. But I was not a good DM. I told him no. So David and company had to wade across these caltrops that were apparently bolted to the floor, taking damage as they went and taking damage from the spears as they went, before they got close enough to the kobold to just like whack them with his shield and then hit the other one with his sword. And David would never let me forget that for the rest of our freaking D&D careers. And let's just say we didn't play a lot together after that because he was so damn offended by this that he just would never forgive me. I was like, the one bad call that I ever made with him as a DM just never forgave me. And yeah, I probably deserve some flack for that. In fact, the comments below, yeah, you should have done that. The fighter was clearly in the right. You could just make a call on that. You didn't have to just say no. And yeah, you're right, but, you know, let a week go by, forgive me, and keep playing. No, he never forgave me. He just, like, he should have been able to do that, damn it, and you're a horrible DM, and I'm never playing with you again. That was all it took. So, let's see. Sorry, I have to check my notes. Once they get through this hallway, this very protected hallway, the next couple of rooms are actually filled. They were guarded by kobolds. They are filled with goblin prisoners, and the kobolds rush over our heroes like, "These are our prisoners!" Bah! And they cut the kobold down because, of course, they do. And the goblin prisoners do not wish to be rescued, because, you know, there have been talks among the kobold that goblins are going to be exchanged for kobold prisoners. So this is going off without a hitch. Don't mess with our chances for survival. We're fine. They're feeding us and giving us trays to poop in. Don't mess it up. We got captured alive. We're lucky to be alive. They did not want to be rescued. And among those goblin prisoners is a halfling named Knackle. Knackle was Nadel's husband, who is one of the missing people they were looking for. And Tail immediately runs up to, he's like tied to a post somewhere by a chain, and they immediately run up to Knackle and like, Knackle, is, you know, there. They smack him awake. He wasn't getting enough to eat. And they weren't treating him as well as the goblin prisoners because he has no place in this war. So why do they got to take good care of him? They're not going to be able to exchange him for anybody. And they kind of like smack him awake, and Tail casts like cure light wounds on him, and they unchain him. And they go, Knackle, is that you? And he goes, oh, who are you? How did you, you know, that light? You know, because goblins and kobold have low light vision or dark vision or whatever. I don't know if halflings do. They might. Hole in my knowledge. But they recover Knackle, and they decide, okay, we can't have him follow us around this entire dungeon. This place is dangerous. You know, we're sitting on the lines of a turf war. We've got to retreat from the Citadel and go back to Oakhurst and deliver Knackle to Nadel. And they go, okay, we're just going to turn around, go back from whence we came, back up out of the canyon, across the forest, etc., etc. And I go, okay, roll your travel check, roll your campfire check, etc., etc. And they make it all the way back without being harassed. So they bring Knackle, and of course they feed him along the way and help him wash in the river and everything so he doesn't look like death when he comes home. And they deliver Knackle to Nadel, who throws her arms around him and kisses him and praises our heroes and gives them gold and more potions and more ration foods, and gives Tail a solid gold holy symbol that she was keeping for a special occasion. And this halfling couple is reunited before them, and they're very happy, very pleased. So our party goes to kind of resupply. They buy a couple more potions. They sleep at the inn. They recover their stats and their hit points and their all the usual things. And that was kind of like the halfway point for them, was bringing Knackle back to Nadal. And Tail, of course, goes to thank Nadal later for all the stuff she's given them, because she could have just said thank you and taken her husband back, but they spent some of the money on supplies, on med kits and things like that, in case they find the niece and nephew. And of course, he goes to knock on the door, and he hears Knackle screaming in pain, and he leans over to see in the window, and of course he's already on the rack with Overbrow Pain. And I go, do you want to go in there and interrupt that? And he goes, no, I guess not. And so Knackle knows all about Overbrow Pain, and apparently loves both sides of his wife's personality. And he goes, I'm not going to interrupt, but I am going to watch. And I go, okay. So this long kinky like porno scene plays out in front of him, where Nadal, or rather Overbrow Pain, is on top. She wears the pants in the bedroom. And I go, well, she's riding him cowgirl and doing all the regular celebrations you might do when you get your husband back from a dungeon. And he goes, all right, yeah. So he watches them have sex for a long time before going back to his party. How is Nadal and Knackle? Oh, they're fine. They're fine. I think I'm going to sleep at the inn tonight again. And I go, yeah, you're probably right. But, and again, they stay the night at the inn. They head back over to the Sunless Citadel. Now, remember I told you, David never forgave me for the Caltrop debacle, so they stopped there. This was a two-session game. They stopped there, and he refused to play anymore after that, so we had to get a new fourth player. So we lost our fighter and gained a wizard named Farspark. So now we have, what is it? Wizard, Cleric, Paladin, Rogue. So we lost our Armor Master, we lost our tank, because David was not pleased that I told him no, and was not willing to talk it out with me. He was just pissed and would not be bargained with after that. So I lost a player, not just a character. So we said that David heard more detailed rumors about Shatterspike that would be in like another area. So he left his party behind to pursue greater adventures to become a hero, rather than finish the quest that he was currently on. So he scratched that out of his quest book and kept going, as his master had bade him to look for a named weapon. And if Shatterspike was elsewhere, that was where he needed to go. So out of character, David just quit and wouldn't talk to me. So bad call as a DM, lost a player, not afraid to say it, it happens. It was a learning experience, if you will. Bad call on my part. But we get Farspark the Wizard, who was all about elemental damage. He took like Burning Hands and Spark and like Cold Breath and all the different... He wanted to be like an elementalist wizard, so he took a little bit of each kind of damage that he could grab. And joined them. It was almost like that scene in the movie The Gamers. Your one character died, so or is gone. This new guy comes up. He's like, I notice your party has no wizard. And of course, Lad, our rogue, looks him over and goes, you seem trustworthy. Would you like to join us? Yes. Yes, I would. And so he goes and he stands behind Harmony, because she's got the thick armor, and then they just Yes, and they walk on like nothing's happened. I was like, well, that's one way to roleplay it. Okay, you've got a wizard now instead of a fighter. Fine. So they go all the way back to the Sunless Citadel for their second push into the structure itself. And eventually, I believe it was Harmony. Harmony found Shatterspike. There was a place where there was a big blank, like, flat of floor that was undisturbed, unmossied, uncracked by the sands of time or anything like that. It was too perfect, too shiny, too nondescript. And Harmony, of course, puts her hands over it and she feels around. It's like, it's not really a floor, Harmony. It's water. And she's like, it looks like stone. It's water. It's like, okay, I reach down and see if I can feel anything. And I go, well, it's only about a foot deep. But when you draw your hand back, you're holding a shining longsword. It's Shatterspike. And she goes, yeah, and she holds this thing up because, you know, level 1, named weapon is amazing. Yeah, Shatterspike is mine. And I think Shatterspike is just like a longsword +1. It's not super fancy, super crazy, or magical, but at level 1, you know, 1d6 +1 is pretty freaking amazing. So Harmony found this legendary weapon that David had been looking for, but David is gone. And she changes out her regular longsword. Now she's got Shatterspike. Yeah! You know, I am not worthy. No, you're not. Shut up! So, Harmony claims Shatterspike. And they move on, and they weave their way back and forth between the goblins and the kobolds, you know, killing those that attack them and going past those that just stare at them. And eventually, they come out to a greater area that became known as Goblin Town. Goblin Town, it had like 7 entrances, so it was hard to miss. Goblin Town was filled, of course, with goblins, like 60, 80, 100 goblins. You know, sleeping, eating, having sex, sharpening their weapons, doing just like all out in this big great room. It was crowded, it was noisy. They were painting graffiti on the walls, and they had I think in the description there was like there's also a statue of a naked woman who's been painted like so true to life it makes you blush. And I was like, that's a weird detail, but I had to read that out loud. It was like they had fashioned like not really an arrow cart, but something similar that would throw a lot of spears and arrows at a particular entrance, so they tried not to go in there. And in a side room off to one side was the throne room of King Gobgob. And they go, King Gobgob? And no, it's not the same guy from the Pathfinder starter box. That's just what I called him. King Gobgob sits in his court with his 2 hobgoblin guards and 4 advisors and 2 more guards at the door. One of them immediately notices you. And he goes, welcome to Goblin Town. Check your weapons! And, you know, check your weapons means hand them over so we can talk and not get killed. And my party actually agrees to this. And they go, well, if we could just talk to them rather than, you know, start a fight with a dozen goblins next to, you know, 80 other goblins, they'd probably shout as soon as we said anything. And they go, well, sure, why not? Harmony hands over Shatterspike to the guards, and our heroes hand off their other dangerous stuff. Farspark really doesn't have a weapon because he's got the magic hands, but you know, you would not rob an old man of his walking stick, would you? And they go before King Gobgob, who wants to know what they're doing there and why they're there and all that good stuff. You know, we're looking for missing people and holy artifacts, and they tell the absolute truth. You know, we were ambushed by kobold, and they're playing off the kobold war that's going on. We were ambushed by kobold, but we killed them and we cut them up and made them into pizza paste for you. He goes, oh, thank you very much. I think I may know where your missing people have gone to. The druid in the dark below must have taken them. And they go, the dark below, what is that? And he gestures to one side of his great throne where there are vines and plants like grasping at the edges of a great like 30-foot wide hole that leads down into the darkness. And he goes, "The great below is where the dark forest lays, and the druid below probably has the ones you are looking for." And they go, "The druid below, does he have a name?" "He is called Belak, the Outcast. He was once a necromancer, but he betrayed everyone who ever knew him and kept his projects for himself." And he goes, "How did you know anything about him?" He's like, "He asked to stay here, so we let him so he wouldn't kill us all. I think he uses us goblins as a buffer from the kobold and all the other would-be sorts that would come in here to disturb him. But if he is kidnapping your people, then I will not stand here and just let him do bad things." And he goes, "Is this druid the one behind the twig blights?" And he goes, "Yes. He makes wooden monstrosities, and they just walk up out of this hole and out through the Sunless Citadel and out through the canyon into the forest." And they go, "Okay. What about the apples?" And he goes, "He gives us the apples as payment, like rent, for staying in the dark below us. And the Sunless Citadel acts as a cap onto a grand cave that lays down far below, but no goblin dares go down there, for the twig blights are many, and the fumes are gross and nasty." And they go, "Oh, great, fumes, wonderful." I was like, well, if he's running a greenhouse down there, it probably smells like fresh-grown flowers and things that goblins don't like. But if that's where the magic apples are coming from, and that's where the niece and nephew went, and they've already got Shatterspike, it looks like the end of their quest lays below the throne room of King Gobgob. And they go, "Would you mind if we went down there?" "Please, go ahead. If he's kidnapping people, that was not part of our deal." It's like, did you see the niece and nephew Huck Relay? They looked like the lordly swords, probably had fancy gear. He goes, "No, I did not. Maybe they went here when I was asleep." So, no adventurers have come through taking down goblins left and right, so maybe they snuck in and snuck down there and never came back. So kind of like phase 2 of the dungeon starts. Well, they grab vines and just kind of shimmy down. They've got ropes and pythons and hammers, and they just kind of shimmy down this thing, down below the citadel itself into the darkness below. And they find themselves in a huge cavernous place, like football stadium sized, just bigger than it's got any right to be. The hollow earth is around them now with columns of stalactites and stalagmites that have met. But the ground is a soft, fertile earth, and the glowing blue mushrooms light the place almost like daytime, that you can almost see the ceiling. And I go, "You've basically emerged into a massive arboretum. You can see rows and rows of nasty-looking herbs and other plants that heaven knows what they're for if you're not a druid. And you can see twig blights wandering around. They go, 'Twig blights!' And they go, they're not especially threatening. They see you, but they're not reacting to you. It's like you see a pair of them go by. One's got a wheelbarrow and the other one's got a shovel. It looks like they're spreading fertilizer just along the ground. And Lad kind of leans down and he digs at the ground for a while, and he says, "There's like 8 inches of like fresh earth and fertilizer down here in this cave. Clearly this is some kind of underground greenhouse. And maybe those glowing mushrooms act like the sun. I don't know. It's very we're not going to argue semantics for growing trees underground, but it's magic. Shut up. And the twig blights are growing other twig blights. So there's this vast, it's almost like a cornfield. They're growing like baby twig blights, and until they like grow faces and arms, they can't go anywhere. But they are innumerable. And there's a path that winds along to this big like middle area where there is a massive tree that drips with blood from a carved face shape from its eyes and from its mouth. And hanging from one of its branches is a sparkling magic apple. And you wander over to it, and you see that there's a man standing there working over an alchemy table. And you kind of lean back for a bit, and they're like, do we see anybody else? Is there anybody else here? And he goes, yes, there are two standing figures. Dressed in lordly outfits, a man and a woman, and off to one side is a massive tree frog. And they go, yeah, druid, animal companion, niece, nephew, magic apple tree. This is it. And as soon as they approach, Balak, the outcast druid, turns around. Beautiful, isn't it? A vampire was once slain on this spot with an applewood stake, and what grew in its place was this magnificent piece of botany. And Tail stops and he goes, it's a vampire tree. And then he immediately starts connecting the dots. Before even Lad, the private investigator, Tail is like, that's how this is working. That's why all the people are disappearing. You're feeding these people to this freaking demon tree, and it's sucking the life out of them and producing these apples. That's why they act like healing spells. They're eating the essence of other people in order to get well again. And Balak kind of nods and he goes, yes, unfortunately for you, you will not be going back to tell the villagers of Oakhurst what exactly has been going on. And he gestures over to the niece and nephew, Huckrelay, who are looking a little worse for wear. The niece has got like yellow-green skin, like she's like a golden delicious apple skin. And the nephew has like dark, craggy bark skin, like he's way further gone, almost like he's turning into a tree himself. The tree has clearly had time to sap some of the life out of them, because there's already a fresh apple waiting on one of its branches. And Balak goes, this is where your adventure ends, like so many others before you, at least one per season. So each one of those apples was somebody that Balak either killed and fed to the tree, or came looking for them and got grabbed by the tree. So this eight participant melee breaks out, 4-on-4. 4 party members versus, the niece and nephew, not of their right minds, Balak the evil druid, and the giant tree frog, who doesn't move for like the first 3 rounds, but whatever, he's an animal companion for the druid. And right away, Farspark the wizard runs forward for the tree and is like, I'm going to do burning hands on it, ha! And as soon as he puts his hands on it, the tree grabs him in like vines and stuff. Oh my god, burning hands, burning hands, burning hands, all over the place. And the tree like shrieks in this horrible like knot voice of groaning, twisting freaking wood and sap and nastiness, and he gets sprayed down with this terrible red sap that looks like blood, and he catches the whole damn thing on fire. No, you fool! And Harmony is the one who meets Balak the outcast with her blade in tow, Shatterspike, legendary blade of the Sunless Citadel, and with one of her smites per day, rushes him right across the chest. Does more damage to evil, does holy damage, does the +1 sword damage, rolls maximum damage. She cuts his HP in half in one go, and she's right up in melee range, so he's going to have trouble casting spells anyway, and all he's got is like a sickle and a staff, because he's a gardener. He's not expecting to get jumped. And of course, Lad and Tail cross swords with the niece and nephew, whose minds are gone because the vampire tree has sucked out portions of their essence. They are not yet all the way gone, but they are still strong enough to provide some challenge for our party. So this 8-person battle breaks out, and eventually the frog jumps into it too, but I think Lad like clopped it over the face with his sap, and it backed off after that. It's just a frog. It's not going to do all kinds of craziness in this battle. But it was Harmony who cut down Balak the outcast, and right away the niece and nephew Huckrelay that Lad was there looking for flopped down like marionettes whose strings had been cut. And the frog disappears in a puff of smoke because it was a summoned monster. So the battlefield falls silent, save for the crackling of the flames on the vampire tree as it screams and wiggles around as though it were alive. And Tail immediately rushes over. He's like, okay, they're clearly not dead, or they'd curl up and turn to ash, or the vampire tree would have eaten them all the way, and maybe there's still enough human left in them that I can save them. And he's like, cure light wounds. No, nothing happened. Okay, I've got a med kit. We bought med kits. Yes, he's panicking for some reason. He brings out the med kit. He's like, okay, I'm gonna do like a general healing check on the niece to like reverse her transformation. He's like, I don't think there's anything in a first aid kit that can do that, but go for it, roll for it. Rolls it, 20. And I was like, okay, well, there was something in that first aid kit that could reverse turning into an apple person. Woo! So the niece, you know, the fake like apple skin peels away to reveal the beautiful woman beneath, and her lordly outfit, you know, shines up and grows out with its colors, and her sword straightens itself from its craggy, rooty, or her staff rather, straightens out from its craggy tree branch shape, revealing the young and beautiful sorceress beneath. He goes, okay, I got to do the same thing to the nephew Huckrelay. And he rolls over there, okay, I've got my healing kit, roll it, 1, shit. And I go, he's dead. Damn it. Well, we got one of them. He had craggy skin in the bark, and his eyes were kind of almost gone. I guess he was too far gone for me to save. We'll have to apologize to Madame Huckrelay later. But Lad, we found the niece and the nephew, so Lad goes and he gets the signet ring from the nephew and picks up the unconscious form of the niece, and I forget their names, so they're just niece and nephew. But they watch the tree burn for a while just to make sure that the twig blights don't come and try to save it with pails of water or whatever. Balek lays dead, and they loot him of all his stuff, and of course Farspark goes around grabbing all the herbs and poison roots and ivy and things that he can from everywhere, and I go, if you grab the wrong thing and it like grows through your heart or something, it's going to be your own fault. I want you to know this. You know, the vampire tree should be warning enough. He's like, oh, I'll be fine, and he gets like 900 gold worth of alchemy ingredients because Farspark was put points into alchemy. It's like, you've got like 900 gold worth of alchemy ingredients just stuffed in your bag, so whatever you can make out of that is more power to you. So they tie the niece to Lad's back so he can carry her like up and out of the abyss that they have crawled down into. And they suddenly look around and they go, you know, we're standing on about 8 inches worth of fertilizer, and we just lit a tree on fire. We should probably run while we still can. And they go, oh God, and they make for the exit. They say goodbye to King Gob Gob. Yeah, sorry, we killed the druid, everything's fine. Don't go down there. Bye. And they book it. They book it out of the Sunless Citadel, up out of the canyon. They don't ever hear it explode, or they don't feel the ground rumble, but let's face it, they just lit the fuse on a cavernous fertilizer bomb that, you know, it could burn forever like Silent Hill, or it could go off like a freaking powder keg. They don't know, but they're not going to stick around to find out. So they run all the way back, you know, they make their 8-hour journey all the way back to Oakhurst, and they don't stop in the forest, they just keep going. And they make it safely back at last. So the adventure kind of came to a close there. Tail, of course, got extra XPs for all of his holy artifacts and scriptures that they found. Harmony ended up with Shatterspike and kind of learned what it meant to fight for someone other than herself. Lad, of course, turned the niece in back to her aunt, Madame Huckrelay, and was greatly rewarded with, I think, like 1,200 gold for doing so. So quite a bit. And the signet ring as well was worth another 600 because the nephew was dead, or, you know, they couldn't bring him back, one of the two. They reported on the origins of the magic apples to everybody who would listen. So the one that was in the shop got thrown in a river, and, you know, there's like, you know, that's a person. That was a person, or a person's soul, or their essence, or something. Nobody should eat that. You know, healing magic though it may as well be necromancy or vampiric magic or whatever you want to call that. Nobody's going to want to touch it. So they threw it away. Let's see. Tail, of course, went to visit Knackle and Nadal and bid them goodbye before they left Oakhurst. And then Farspark, again, just kind of showed up out of nowhere. So he decided to stick with them. You seem trustworthy. Would you like to join us? And, Lad, like I said, has an office in Absalom, which is the major city of this, campaign setting. And I go, you can all return to Absalom, knowing well enough that you have solved the mysteries and gained all the treasures of the Sunless Citadel. And they get back into the carriage that brought them there, the big, I guess, 10-seater, or whatever you want to call it. And they pay the cabbie, and they're like, all right, to Absalom! And they ride off into the horizon. So I do feel bad that David and I could not see past our differences, or that he would not forgive my bad call as a DM, but I didn't get to play with him anymore for a long time after that, at least not as a DM. But Tail, Harmony, Lad, and Farspark had several more adventures together. This was just their the tip of their iceberg, the tip of their campaigns together. And though they didn't have a big, sweeping, epic campaign, they did have, several episodic adventures together to climb up through the levels as they pleased. So we will definitely be seeing them next time. But that is the end of the Sunless Citadel story. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I will see you guys on the next D&D stories. Keep gaming. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I really love telling D&D stories, and I also really love eating food. So if you'd like to toss a couple of gold pieces into this humble bard's hat, be sure to check out my Patreon. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit the like button as well. And if you'd like access to maps, character art, and channel updates too, check out the D&D Stories Facebook. Keep gaming!